That is Lloyd Waniki. He is the project manager for Sustainable Inclusive Business. Welcome, Lloyd. Glad to have you with us. And when we talk about, let's just get right into Sustainable Inclusive Business, what do you aim to do?
Thank you for having us. So, Sustainable Inclusive Business is a project of KEPSA Foundation. We're supported by the Dutch Embassy here in Nairobi. Mainly what we do is we focus on three things: people, planet, and profit. And how we do them is by focusing on four things, which are circular economy, people, redefining value, and also circular waste management in general. So I'm very delighted to hear the topic conversation going on here on green financing, because that is interesting for us, because it opens opportunity for businesses to take advantage of that element to implement circular economy models that help them manage their waste. If I can have a zero waste model, which is what is going to drive the planet forward. You've seen recently during the Blue Economy Conference, for example, we're just talking about how much waste we are taking to the sea. In a minute, statistics say that in a minute we drop a truck ton of plastic in the sea. How do we stop this? Again, these are initiatives that are happening around us that we can all take advantage of to address the problem of waste and create circular economy models within organizations, and again, even within municipalities or counties.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. So you aim to help businesses become more climate friendly as well, and for them to reduce the sorts of output of waste that they're contributing to the degradation of the climate.
Yes, exactly. And how we do this, we help them measure their impact. So sometimes we just run in a business that you don't know to what extent you are sustainable and inclusive. Mm-hmm. Are you employing people from your community? Are you, if you're a farmer, are you growing your produce sustainably? If you're in transport business, how do you do it? Are you conscious about the environment? So these are the things that we come in and look at, and we help you measure, and then identify areas of improvement, and then you can begin to grow. And we say every step counts. We are all not perfect, so a step at a time, and we eventually have a better world for all of us.
Okay, and when we talk about businesses that are, being sustainable and things like that with the environment in mind, how far do you think Kenyan businesses particularly are conscious of this fact, are cognizant of what they're putting out into the environment in terms of the harm they're causing?
We've been running Sustainable Inclusive Business for 3 years now, and when we began, most people would come to us and ask us, what is this sustainability story you're talking about? Mm-hmm. And over the years, 3 years, we've seen more companies understand this topic. They want to get involved. We've seen even smaller companies. For example, now we are working with 10 companies that are very SMEs, working with smallholder farmers. Yeah. Those companies are interested in becoming sustainable and inclusive. They are changing their business practices. They are concerned. They want to be a force for good.
Okay. So what are some of the basic steps? Some people might find it daunting that maybe it's not as cost effective for them to go green. Yeah. What are some of the basic steps that a small business, a large business can take for them to already start, being more environment friendly?
I think it begins with very little things to do. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in an office setting, you'd have lights on the whole day. That's a resource wasted, and that has a negative impact on the planet. So how about you consider having your lights off when you don't need them? Again, how you reduce your waste? How often do you print? Can you go digital? All these are conversations that offices can begin to have, and through research has actually confirmed that once you look at those aspects, your profits go up. And the other aspect is that customers now are more conscious of companies that are not environmentally friendly, that are not thinking about sustainability in that element. So if you have a company and you just don't care about the people, about the planet, eventually all your customers will go. And this is something that we see managers of this time are very concerned about. And that's why they begin to involve sustainability managers to come on board to help them shape these processes within the organization. Yeah.
Okay. So specifically, when you talk about the fact that if you're not planet conscious, eventually you lose people who believe in your product as well, and your customers too. But sometimes it may feel like there are companies who try and, put this out as more of a CSR front, that yes, we are environmentally conscious and here's what we do, but it all seems more shallow as opposed to them really truly trying to reduce the sorts of waste that they're putting out. So how do you decipher that?
So there's what we call the old CSR, where companies would just, out of their profit, cut out a bit of chunk and give it to maybe a children's home or do it something for charity. But that is changing. So what companies are looking at now is how do we use this money that we're making, or how do we look internally inwards in our processes, in our structure, to make sure that this is embedded in our core values and in our day-to-day lives. And we've seen, for example, very even Kenyan companies, many of them, who are looking inwards and saying, we are using this amount of paper every year, how can we cut down? And they report that at the end of the year, they submit. You've seen some sustainability reports coming out, and companies are outlining what they are doing and what they intend to do in the next 10 years. Because there can't be a business without the world. So it has come a time when you have to start thinking, how do we make our world better? How do we stop cutting down trees aimlessly? How do we reduce the amount of plastic we use? For example, I've seen a story you've ran about Nakumatt. So for example, supermarket chains or outlets sometimes use double packaging, which is plastic. How do they look into that and decide we don't need this much plastic in our packaging? All these are things that companies and businesses need to begin to look at. How do they treat their employees? How do they treat their customers? People along the value chain. And businesses have a lot of influence, we notice, because if they can influence suppliers to even make changes. So an outlet can influence a supplier to reduce on the amount of plastic they're using. Yes.
So it comes full circle.
Full circle, yeah.
And I like how you say, about double packaging and things like that. I know, of course, when the plastic bag ban was introduced in Kenya, people were very much confused, and they were like, well, can we really do it? And here we are. So the initial commitment is what it takes, like you said, and it takes the business, and then it goes on to the suppliers and the value chain, essentially. But, when we talk about manufacturing industry, let's move to that now.
Yes.
And when they are running their factories all day, all night, the power that they're using, some of these things, it's very hard for them to cut down on. So what would be a strategy for such sorts of businesses?
So in Kenya, we are very fortunate because most of our power comes from sustainable sources, geothermal and a bit of hydro. But thinking of a large company or manufacturing sector is how do you look inwards to introduce things like solar energy? Again, solar energy, the initial cost is high, but when you introduce it, you end up cutting your electricity cost, so you're not buying it. So we've seen some companies who are now actually selling power to Kenya Power. So there are a lot of things that manufacturing sector can do. If they're using so much water, how do they look into recycling or cleaning the water after they're done using it? So such things to bring down the costs, but also take care of the environment.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Leoid, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was Leoid Mwaniki, the project manager at Sustainable Inclusive Business, and is talking all about how businesses can become more conscious of the environmental impact they have, and of course how we've seen that being taken up by businesses within the country as well. Let's move on now to the tourism sector, which is set to get a major boost through the introduction of 5 regional tourism councils in the country to boost promotion of the industry beginning January next year. Now, speaking in Mtwapa, Kilifi County, after the official launch of the online tourism marketing site, Tourism CS Najib Balala hailed the efforts in tourism recovery strategy that has tremendously increased the numbers to over 20% growth. He said the government has identified 5 regional councils which will be connected to the Kenya Tourism Board for the purposes of promoting tourism. Now, the ministry will also unveil other regional tourism councils in Rift Valley, the Lake region, the Northern region and Nairobi.
We are going to have an over 20% growth of tourism this year. So it's positive. Already Diani is doing very well. Mombasa is doing very well, as Malindi is doing very well. The other areas, which is the national parks, we are going to have again the symposium and the African Safari Circuit in February. We're having a meeting. Yesterday I had a meeting with the stakeholders for the African Safari. All the other counties, there are about 8 counties which do safaris. We are involving them, and we are going to have a symposium on how do we improve on the African Safari.
Now, Washington, D.C.'s top prosecutor has sued Facebook over the scandal that broke earlier this year involving Cambridge Analytica's use of data from the social media giant. Attorney General Karl Racine, in a statement, said Facebook failed to protect the privacy of its users and deceived them about who had access to their data. Now, the lawsuit comes as Facebook faces new reports that it shared its users' data without their permission. Still keeping it with international news, a third Canadian has been detained in China following the arrest of a Chinese technology executive in Vancouver amid a diplomatic dispute also involving the United States. Now, the detentions of the Canadians followed the December 1st arrest in Vancouver of Meng Wanzhou, chief financial officer of Huawei, at the request of the United States, which is engaged in a trade war with China. Now, Huawei is the world's biggest supplier of telecoms network equipment and second biggest smartphone seller.
In the case of the current consular situations, we're going to continue to defend them, to stand up for them, to ask for more information on the charges being brought forward or the reasons for detention. And we will continue to engage on a case-by-case basis in a thoughtful way on any consular cases that come up. But we are looking into the details on this most recent one that doesn't seem to fit the pattern set by the previous two, but we'll have more to say as we collect the facts on this issue.
So on the previous two,
we have engaged in a very, very thoughtful way on trying to get the best outcome, and sometimes politicizing or amplifying the level of public discourse on this may be satisfying in the short term, but would not contribute to the outcome we all want, which is for Canadians to be safe and secure.
Well, this year has seen a fascinating science and technology innovation, stream come to life. A prosthetic arm developed at the Georgia Institute of Technology allowed amputee Jason Barnes to play the piano by detecting muscle movement in his stump using ultrasound technology and an algorithm to predict which metal finger he intends to use. A Japanese research team built a humanoid robot that resembles the intricate muscular and skeletal structure of a human body, making it capable of mimicking human activities like push-ups and sit-ups. Researchers in South Korea showed off their people-carrying robot designed for rescue missions or helping people with disabilities. Now, City GPS has released the latest progress report on China's Belt and Road Initiative, which marked 5 years of existence in September this year. The report did find that the major challenges facing the initiative are dollar constraint, as since the renminbi is not a fully functioning global currency, it largely requires dollar-denominated financial resources. Also, one of the other challenges was increasingly loud accusations from recipients recipient countries that the initiative is too little win-win for all, and it seems more like it's benefiting China. And the IMF has called for absolute transparency in the nature of liabilities that the Belt and Road Initiative is creating. And a third challenge that was cited is explicit opposition of the US, which has warned recipient countries against what it described as a one-way road. So with that story, we're going to now wrap up the news, but we will of course take a look at the Twitter poll question that we asked you this afternoon. And that question, of course, was about the Green Bond Program. Do you know what the Green Bond Program entails? We'd asked you on Twitter, yes and no, what did you have to say? And we of course did talk more on the program about exactly what this is, what it entails, and its use. We had Silas on Twitter saying a green bond is a bond specifically earmarked to be used for climate and environmental projects. And so that was a definition that was coming in from you on Twitter. And of course we did speak to KBA Director for Corporate Affairs Nuru Mugambi to enlighten us further about what this means for the country, as when we talk about what's coming next year for Kenya, we are preparing for the first sovereign green bond issue next year.